for everything they've done for the team. This is really, really, really cool. The CWF Rumble has been sort of one of the big benchmark events in this region of the country, or this state, I guess, for a while now. It's always a great house. It's always like the night that generates probably the most excitement in this room. And it's really, really cool to see people coming from out of state, to see people that have sort of been exposed to us on worldwide come from all around to be part of Rumble Weekend. And sincerely thank Johnny P. and thank JD for sort of organizing this.
One of the things that really kind of strikes me is, you've been doing this for 17 years, and it's really only been within the past couple of years that people have really, truly paid attention outside of our own local market. And you for years, you think you're doing a really good job, but you never really get the feedback or the attention, partially because of the part of the country you're performing in, and partially because we really hadn't hit our stride yet, no matter how good we were think we were doing. And for people then just to bring this together, and for you people to come from other states and all these thousands of miles away, I mean, it's something you always hope for, but you don't ever really think it'll actually happen once after so many years go by, and you don't really get that attention. And then when it happens, it's like, wow, like people actually like dig our stuff now after all these years. It's crazy.
No, it really is. And for anyone that is not familiar, for anyone that hasn't listened to other podcasts or anything like that, just as a real quick introduction, Grant is our technical director. He runs the cameras, he runs the production, he does the editing, basically worldwide. Once the live show ends, all the elements of worldwide go into his hands to edit and to distribute. And basically, my jurisdiction, my responsibilities are anything that goes on the live show goes through me. I don't pay the bills. My name's not on this building. But anything that's on the live show goes through me. Some people think I own this, and I assure you I do not. But as far as delegation of responsibility, there are other parties that are huge parts of CWF. You'll get to hear about them, some tonight, some tomorrow. But that's mine and Grant's responsibility. Who would like to start us off? Ooh, John. Well, okay.
I did this all just so I could ask you a question.
Okay.
No, Grant had mentioned, you're doing this for years and you think you're doing really well, and then there's these benchmarks that make you be like, well, now we're doing well, and like before I was ridiculous. What's something where you guys look back at where you were both, man, we're the fucking man right now, and now you go like, what the fuck was I thinking?
So a moment that we were proud of, but in hindsight, we are not proud of?
Yes. Or not as proud. Maybe.
Okay.
Oh, ECW tribute match. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So
we were so happy that day.
Yeah. So
except for Nick, who blew the spot.
It's okay. That's okay. I blew a spot too. It's fine.
Doesn't mean the same way.
So it was the Halloween show in 2010, 2011. And I grew up as a teenager during the ECW years. It was a huge part of my fandom. And so I decided, and I pulled some people in, that we were going to do an ECW tribute match. And it was me coming out as Paul Lee for the Halloween show, Nick coming out as Tommy Dreamer with his then girlfriend as Beulah, Kazi coming out as Sabu, Walter Eaton coming out as the Sandman, and then my buddy Corey coming out as Taz. And we wrestled one guy who'd been around for a little while, and then 3 trainees under masks, basically just there to get beat up, basically. And we had a blast. We had run-ins. Trevor Lee and his partner at the time looked like Van Dam. So Justin Duke runs in. He's got the Van Dam singlet on and ponytail. Trevor Lee is running around as Bill Alfonso. We had a Raven. We had a New Jack. It was awesome. And it's like a 27-minute segment or something ridiculous. It would never be allowed in the modern structure of CWF. And Nick blew the spot. He was supposed to kiss his own girlfriend and forgot. I blew a spot too, because at one point the person playing New Jack brings out the big garbage can full of weapons, and somehow there's a tennis racket involved somewhere, and I threw the tennis racket at Trevor Lee at ringside, who artfully dodged it, and I'm watching in slow motion this racket, end over end, boom, hit a fan right in the face. And I'm like, that's it, we're out of business. And fortunately, the guy was a comp who was with one of the workers, and he thought it was great. So we were spared on that. But I'm just like, okay, this guy's going to sue us because I threw a fucking tennis racket at his head, and that's it for us. I don't know if Coach is even still here, but I'm told that Coach, who was the booker of record at the time, was livid as all this is going on, which, with older eyes, I can see why he would be. We were all just, treating it like a big playground, basically, and having fun and doing what we want to do. But I'm told, I don't think we've ever had a conversation about it, but I'm told that he was livid the whole time. And looking back with older eyes, I can see why. So that's the perfect analogy for that, because there is always that sort of struggle between what the show needs and what someone wants to do, thinks would be fun, thinks would fit their character. That's a tough, delicate balance. And we kind of went a little. That match is on YouTube, and we kind of went a little wild and crazy. I think it's actually edited on YouTube.
No, it's
okay. It was a long ass segment. I remember that.
I put the full show up.
Thanks, Cease.
Watch that and then watch the Osiris ladder match.
No.
Not ever watch the Osiris ladder match. You're actually fired for uploading that.
I hope we're going to see that tonight.
That's on JB there.
I asked one question on Twitter and then just...
worse. Even as that was happening, like me and Mitch Connor and like some guys that really kind of get the business are watching it unfold. And we're just like, this is shit. This is horrible. Were you the ref?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was horrible. I felt bad for you being in there. Oh, it was atrocious.
It
was horrible. I didn't know you guys. I was like, I knew you. I mean, it's like, oh my God, that was. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Look, my only defense to that, it sucked. But to get any blame off of us, that was that AWA showcase show, and we tried to get eyes on ourselves. We tried to do a lot of co-promotions. We were with that Frontier Wrestling Alliance, FWA, in the early years. We did the stuff with the AWA. All of that was done in the attempt to get more eyes on our product, and by doing so, you have to make sacrifices. And I assure you, I had nothing to do with the booking that finished. Stuttsy had nothing to do with the booking that finished, and we were completely against it from the second we heard it.
I don't think I ever heard it. I think I just watched it on hold.
Oh, I knew what was about to happen.
I never heard it. I think I just watched. I mean, it's Fiercely Bruiser that night, and that was awesome. But that's my only memory of that. I met Fiercely Bruiser, and he was awesome, and he's still awesome. And I hope him and Silas will come sometime. Yes.
So tell us more about that. How about the fake AWA? Because it wasn't just the one night that there was the association with the fake AWA.
I can honestly say I have no idea how we came to be associated with the AWA because I was just talent at the time.
Yeah, that's actually a question for Coach if he was booker of record, as you said. But
that's that tomorrow.
I'm sure it was a thing where Delgado just hit us up and there was some exchange made.
Gagner,
whatever. I don't know.
He was the worst too. I also don't know. There has always been. I can say there's always been the desire to build an organization or a group of organizations, whether it's PWI or AWA or even just as simple as me reaching out to SCI or me reaching out to whoever to build relationships with people. There's always been that desire, so I assume the AWA thing was probably born out of that, but I was not privy to those conversations at all.
I think we make a lot more smarter decisions in this era as far as who we associate ourselves with.
Let's see how the Ohio guys do tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. No, I'm happy to have the Ohio guys. Next. Yes.
I want to talk about the Stewie Fox Eric Royal match.
Cool.
Man, that one, I was blown away by it. It might be my favorite match of the year. How heated was it actually in the building? And
oh my God.
And was it? Do you have extra footage? Because it seemed like something straight out of like the '80s. How
Baby's kids.
I actually have not gone back and watched it yet because I'm mad because I wanted to record us talking over the stuff outside because we didn't have monitors, so we didn't have monitors, so we truly couldn't see what was happening outside, and I wanted to go in and VO it, and it just slipped through the cracks with planning this weekend and everything.
Natural sound worked.
Sure. I just want my voice on everything. No, I really don't. No, I thought, and I loved that everybody on Twitter seemed to enjoy that and kind of put it over. The one thing I saw that may have even been from Dylan was like, this match is proof that the territory style still works. And I thought that was a fascinating tweet because to me, that kind of stuff comes easy because you sort of condition the audience to feel and react that way, if that makes sense. If you go out there and people are doing dives in the first match and dropping each other on their heads and apron bumps and all this stuff, then you get to the point where by match 8 or 9 nothing means anything. And all that has to do with conditioning the audience and sort of treating them to expect things to go a certain way. And that Chapel Hill crowd, they know when City comes to the ring, that's the main event, it's going to be a fight, it's going to be, that's what we came here to see. And so when you have somebody who is truly over like that in a town like that, to me it makes it really, really easy. And the gravity of it didn't really hit me until I saw, I think it was your tweet, Dylan. The gravity of it didn't really hit me because to me it's easy to cultivate that. You just got to have somebody who's truly over in that sort of environment, and it literally kind of writes itself.
And I think the similar situation happened even in this building when we had the Evolution Pro guys invade, because out of context and what these people are used to, and then you have these outsiders, and if you're not familiar with the Evolution Pro, I mean, like fans legitimately called the police, and we had to have that conversation with the police outside and that whole thing. So I mean, it's just about the environment that you create, and then when you kind of spin it and mess with those people's emotions, it means something.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I was super happy with it. I did not feel in danger or anything, but I was very much telling all the trainees, maybe be on camera, to get Eric the hell to the back, just in case. But no, it was good. It was exactly kind of the vibe that we were going for.
Yeah, I mean, we knew going in what to expect out of it. If it had not been like that, I would have been disappointed. And that crowd was snooty.
Yeah, I agree. The whole thing would have kind of felt flat. Yes, sir.
So, I think one of the rich ironies of CWF being an old school promotion in a lot of ways is that for a lot of people, I think the first real exposure is the worldwide era. But I always think about it. I heard about CWF before that because I knew you from message boards and other stuff going back 100,000 years. But to me, the big impact, I remember CWF being a thing, was the first National Pro Wrestling Day. And it's weird to me that Andrew Everett doing a double moonsault put CWF on the map for a lot of people.
Right.
And I just, that never really is talked about. So I wonder how you guys feel about that that first National Pro Wrestling Day experience, because as I feel about it, I think that was kind of the first step, and then the worldwide era is when things went to another level. But I wonder how you guys have, with the benefit of hindsight perspective, looking back on that now.
I think that's exactly accurate. That CWF exists before National Pro Wrestling Day and then after National Pro Wrestling Day, because we went up there and were invited by Mike Quackenbush, who we love, who has always treated us great, and we took Trevor Lee and Rick Converse against Eric Royal and Chica Kid and Andrew Everett in a tag match, and we just we knew what we were capable of. And I say we as a team. I was on commentary. I think we took reps too. We knew what we as a team were capable of, and we knew that this was our first chance at really sort of being seen by that internet audience. There had been a lot of talk internally within the company of how to become more known on the internet, even predating social media. CWF had a weekly web-based television show in like 2005 on the old iSlot site, way before most other people did. They weren't really ready for it yet. The audience wasn't really there for it like social media, and when it became so easy to share content and share a link. So we knew this was a chance to expose everything we did to a big audience. I thought they structured the match beautifully to sort of position Drew in a certain way, and just everything about it just came together in a perfect storm. It was the first match on the show that got "This is awesome" or "Please come back" or any of that. I was crying doing commentary. I came back to where a bunch of us went, like 12 of us went. I came back and Coach was crying, and a couple other ones were crying because it was a validation of how hard we had worked up to that point.
It was the first time we really received the recognition that we felt we had been working for at that point, whatever it was, 12 or 13 years. Like that, because the emotion, because I was doing the same thing, and it was just, this right here is like, it's almost like a slow build to this moment, but that was the first time it was like, bam! We got it. We got that attention for the first time, and that's why it was so powerful for all of us involved.
Yeah, and there were, and everybody knew it. That was the thing, was I got a ton of tweets and a ton of messages that we stole the show, and that's very reaffirming. I don't say that as an FU to anybody else that worked that day. I just take it as affirmation that we did a good job. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. That's the moment that CWF turned a corner, and coincidentally, like, I don't know, everything, maybe not coincidentally, but everything just sort of built from that point, I think. Yes. Yes.
You've often, I think you mentioned on Twitter, if it was up to you, the older stuff would not be on the YouTube channel. It wouldn't be seen at all. I like the older stuff, but why do you feel like it shouldn't be there?
I feel like a lot of the older stuff.
Have you watched the ladder match?
The thing is that that's your history.
I feel like, no, it is our history, and I don't necessarily shy away from it. I guess I just feel like a lot of the older stuff, in my opinion, loses something without context. And if we had the privilege of, and if the library was organized so that we could literally go the first show in June 2006, and then the second show in June 2006, and then the first show in July 2006, and then the second show in July 2006, I would feel better about it. But the library is kind of disorganized, and so it's kind of just literally, pulling out a random tape, converting it, putting it on YouTube without context. I feel like you need that context to really enjoy it, because the model has always been sort of a territory model that we're trying to get people to come back every 2 weeks or every week or whatever it is at that point in time. So I feel like, there's some great shows from back then that I still love, but I feel like a random January 2007 CWF show is better in the context of having seen Battle Cake first and having seen End of an Era afterwards, if that makes sense.
Well, I think, too, like, if you hear about CWF and you go to YouTube for the first time, type in CWF Mid-Atlantic, and say Nick Richards versus Chase Dakota pops up, that's not going to keep you watching CWF.
I don't know, man. That one where the thumbnail is Nick putting Chase in the full Nelson will keep some people from watching, because it's got
15,000.
What?
Yeah, that's
no.
It's like
different clientele. No way.
15,000 one-handed.
Those aren't the fans AJ Styles cares about, but that's fine. We'll take them. It's all good.
So what you're trying to say, though, is if you could take that old footage and convert it to where it's more episodic, like the worldwide areas, you'd feel more comfortable with that.
I personally would be more interested in it, yes. Not to slight anyone's efforts as far as uploading the old footage, but I personally would prefer it if we could do it more episodic style.
To try to piggyback on that, there has been an effort on my part to categorize it a little bit better. There are playlists for each individual year, so on and so forth. So there has been an effort to clean it up a little bit. YouTube's is very not friendly for that sort of thing, unfortunately.
Not good enough.
Wait for your own fucking Q&A season.
I'm over here getting buried. I'm trying to defend myself.
Genuinely, I'm very grateful for Cecil doing so much work with the old footage, even though Stuttsy is not a big fan.
Yeah, big fan of some of it. Like I said, I just feel like I would have buried someone who wasn't sitting here. But yeah, there are certain matches that I would not want that to be the first thing someone sees if they look up CWF. Yeah. Next. Yes, sir.
As someone who got introduced to CWF during the worldwide era and trying to work my way back through, I get told, oh, like this, you've got a lot of really great content now, but there is a deeper appreciation you get the farther you go back, the more you know. And someone's trying to build that appreciation, like, I don't know, I really appreciate that some of the older shows are available, just so I can even bits here and there, so I can start trying to reconstruct that timeline, because you'll reference things on commentary, like they were partners, way back when, and like, okay, well, I want to find that show from 2011 because now my interest is peaked, or I want to find that show from like 2008, and like, so I can.
You'll love all these Rumble stats I've got for tomorrow night. Go ahead.
It's like, as a viewer, as a new viewer, there's so much there that I want to see, and you like dropping those hints on commentary and seeing the little things in the ring, the callbacks. It makes me want to dig into the territory's history. So I don't know if this is so much of a question as just an observation.
Awesome observation. Thank you. Yeah. I will out myself as being somewhat ignorant to a certain niche of wrestling. I don't know anything about Dragon Gate, but I'm told we're a lot like Dragon Gate. I'm told that they have a big emphasis on like their history and something that happened 6 years ago gets called back to or whatever. I haven't seen Dragon Gate other than like the 6-mans on WrestleMania weekend a couple of times, but I've been told more than once, oh, you remind me of Dragon Gate. I'm like, sweet, thanks, brother.
How is that possible?
Sweet, thanks. But no, that's cool. I love that too. I think there is a big benefit. Even if it doesn't necessarily yield a gate receipt or anything like that, but I think there's sort of a sentimental benefit in rewarding longtime fans. And there's a great moment in one of the Rumbles of the worldwide era. I can't remember which one it is, Grant might, but Steve Green is number 30. And Steve Green was a huge deal here. He was a great heavyweight champion. He was a lifer for CWF that is taking care of his son right now, and I respect him for that. But in one of the Rumbles, maybe like 2014, 2015, Steve Green was number 30. And I remember there was a review or a tweet or something that they were live tweeting the Rumble as it aired on Worldwide or as it aired on YouTube, and it said, Steve Green is number 30, who is apparently a big deal in this building. And I thought that was well done because that said that not only the crowd's reaction, but us on commentary and the way the other people in the ring reacted to it clued this person in that, okay, I don't know the history of CWF, but this guy is clearly a big deal for reasons left unsaid. And I actually took that little piece of advice, that little tweet rather, I took it as a piece of advice and said, okay, in the future when we have a moment like that, it's my job to fill that gap in and not just be like, oh, holy shit, Steve Green, he used to be the champion here, but to actually tell that story in 5 or 10 seconds. I did a show with Al Snow about 10 or 12 years ago for the organization that's now called PWX. It was not called PWX at the time. And I was managing Corey Edsel against Marcellus King, if any of the old school CWF fans know those two names. And we had shot an angle a month before where I, as the announcer, actually took Marcellus' finisher and got laid out, and the deal was I was bringing Corey in for the one shot to get my revenge or whatever. And that show just happened to be the show that Al Snow was there as a guest. And so, of course, we were like, Al, would you watch our match? Would you tell us anything about it, please? And we had an okay match, and we got to the back, and we all went to Al, and I was managing Corey, and we all went to Al, and we're like, Al, what do you think? And he said, it was a very good match, but you needed to tell the story of why it was. I could tell it was a heated grudge match, but I don't know why. You needed to tell that story. And I'll never forget, I looked at Al and I said, well, a lot of the same people that are here were here last month when we shot the angle. And Al looked at me and goes, I wasn't here last month when you shot the angle. And I was like, right. And he was 100% right. And I tell guys every week without fail, especially for promos, you have to tell the audience. It's not good enough to just be like, Nick Richards, I'm coming to kill you this Saturday. You got to explain the context of why you feel that way, because someone might be seeing just that little snippet, and you have to provide context. If there's one thing I'm big on as a booker, or whatever you want to call me, it's context, I think. Yes?
So, in terms of creative, one thing that I was mentioning earlier was that no matter what, my fantasy booking is going to be met or exceeded by whatever actually happens. And one thing that led from that was that I'm really happy that in CWF, sometimes the obvious thing is what actually ends up happening. Just because something seems like it's the obvious payoff or the obvious next step, not everything has to be a swerve in CWF. And I feel like that is a mistake that some people make that doesn't happen here. So could you comment on sometimes the thing that is the obvious thing to happen is the thing that should happen?
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
These guys and girls, for that matter, have heard me say it does, because people will tell me, they'll come back with me, well, that's the predictable route. We shouldn't do it that way. To which I will say, it's okay if you know who's winning when you buy your ticket at 6:30 or when you come in at 6:30. That's completely fine. That's how wrestling kind of is supposed to be. Our job is to put it up in the air or put that expectation on its head in the moment. And yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think there's a lot of wrestling that changes things just to change things rather than reaching a logical conclusion.
To speak on that, the swerve for the sake of swerve is stupid. We like putting a lot of things out there to lead in multiple directions. I like misdirecting people. Doesn't mean we're doing a swerve, but we can easily just take a sharp left. And I always remember, and Nick, you'll like this story, it was Nick's first or second Rumble. And we were, Jeff was the booker of record, and we were tossing around ideas about, who's going over this year and whatnot. And, Nick was just this young rookie. And I was like, what about Nick? No one would ever see it coming. And Jeff was like, you're right. If we went and take a shit in the ring, they wouldn't see that coming either.
Okay.
More modern.
A great example of that just happened, and this is way more candid than I normally am in front of people, but hell, you guys came from wherever. I felt like most everyone knew the smart money was on Chet to win the Weaver Cup this year. I felt like that was pretty universal. He's probably winning. And that was where the idea came from of we have an obligation to turn that moment upside down and put it in as much distress as we can put so that people begin to question if that's what's really, if this is really happening, and that's where the bogus referee came from. That's where all that came from. Was we knew the people were right, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted that moment to be as satisfying as it could possibly be for the viewer, and so I thought the best way to do that was to put that outcome in jeopardy in some way and have take a preposterous course to get to that destination. So I was really proud of that. I don't know how anybody felt about it, but I was really proud of that because I have a great sort of encyclopedia mind for like 80s and 90s wrestling and finishes and stuff like that. I don't know that I'm truly that creative as much as I am good at recycling stuff that impacted me as a fan. But on that night, I felt creative because I felt like we put something together, we structured something. It wasn't just something that I had seen on Mid-South tapes or whatever and put a spin on. So like that's a good example of that, of knowing, okay, this is probably, we feel like most people in the room are expecting this logical conclusion that at the end of the night, Chet's going to be there with the trophy. How do we put that in as much distress as possible? How do we deliver that moment in a way that is satisfying and not just run up the middle, I guess?
Yeah, I think at the end it came off rather than just being people leaving me like, well, I knew Chet was going to win. They were like, oh my God, what a finish to that match.
Hopefully. Ideally. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So, I think probably CWF, probably most often in my mind, is comparable to Wildside and Anarchy. Southern Territory runs episodically, long lineage in one place that goes back 100 million years, seemingly, especially in modern indie wrestling. And obviously the most famous export from there is AJ Styles, from here people like Trevor, or Cedric, or, Andrew, or whatever. But in that building, for a lot of people, Jason Cross is the guy that everybody goes, oh man, Jason Cross could have been like AJ Styles. The timing wasn't right or whatever. Who's that guy for CWF? Where you feel like if the timing had been a little bit different, maybe this would have been the guy that emerged out of this area at a bigger level.
Yeah. Good. You want me to go first? Yeah. Like, I would much rather bury this guy than put him over. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough.
I already know what you're going to say.
Magic moves.
It's not usually so, I'm sorry. No, honestly, he would have been such a perfect fit for PWG and all these other promotions if the YouTube era existed, and that's Kamikaze Kid. Like, Kazi had, like, in his prime, like, he could hang with anyone else out there, and if YouTube had been a bigger thing, he would have been an absolute star on that platform.
I don't think I've ever watched one of his matches. That's a really good question. Personally, I'm a big Ray Kandrak guy. Personally, I was somewhere. I can't remember where or what I was watching, but I was somewhere, and someone, it was maybe like a Jim Cornette kind of person, was speaking about how bookers tend to focus on what they feel like are an idealized version of themselves. Vince is a body guy. He likes big muscle guys because he sees himself. If he were a wrestler, he'd be a big muscle guy. Vern Gagne liked shooters. Bill Watts liked big, football players. It's like the person that a booker picks as their guys is sort of like how they would see themselves as a wrestler. And
I see you, Beverly.
I know, and I never really thought of that until I heard it. And then when I heard, I think it was Cornette. When I heard him say it, I was like, if I'm really, who are my guys? And I was like, oh shit, my guys are like Ray and Mecca and Biggs and the Dawsons. Those are like my guys. And it dawned on me that was 100% true of my own style without me even realizing it. So for me, Ray Kandrak is someone who I would have liked to have seen go somewhere. I certainly think if the stars had aligned, Converse could have gotten a run somewhere. It's just a different. You were there. It was a different time, like 2004, 2005. We were literally still sending VHS tapes and stuff. It was so much harder to get booked and get seen and travel than it is now. And this is kind of maybe an obvious answer, but Brad Attitude, I think, should have made so much more money in this business than he did. And he's still a reasonably young guy, so who knows? But that's somebody that I truly love creating with. He's so sharp, and I love guys who will poke holes in what I've got. It's one of the things I love about Trevor Lee. Now, they have to be right for this exercise to work, or else it's just aggravation. But Brad is one of those guys that's always right. Trevor's one of those guys that's always right. It's looking at it like, well, this is why this doesn't work. So, that's a couple of people. I'm trying to think of someone really obscure, but that's a couple of people that I think I would have loved to have seen take this farther or go farther. And he's doing pretty well for himself right now. I would even throw Caprice Coleman in there. When I first saw Caprice Coleman, I was like, this guy is freaking awesome. And he's had a good run, but that's somebody that I would love to have seen had a bigger run earlier in his career.
Also a Cornelia guy, too.
Also a Cornelia guy, that's right.
And what's interesting about him is that he's developed now that he's become a great talker, as opposed to just being a great athlete when he was in Cornelia and stuff.
See, I had seen him talk in the Carolinas. I've seen criminally little Wildside or Cornelia or whatever you want to call it. But I thought he was a pretty good talker when I knew him in the late 90s, early 2000s. He had his promo. I'll put it at the very least, he had his promo. Champagne, Marty Garner was the coolest guy in the world to me when I was like 12 years old. And I completely, people ask me sometimes, like, when was your moment in the business that you felt like you were in? Because I don't know who all knows my story. I know Bruce knows because he was there. But I was the kid that was at all the matches from the time I was 10 years old until 14 or 15. I started carrying jackets and taking pictures and building really shitty GeoCities websites for guys and stuff like that. Like guys or promotions that didn't have websites. Me and my buddy Corey would build them little shitty Angel Fire GeoCities websites. And then I started training and taking bumps when I was 17 probably. So that's a very brief history of me. But anyway, when I was a kid coming to matches, like Champagne was the guy. He was in shape. He just looked and seemed major league. He looked and seemed a step above everybody else. And when I was 17 or so, I think I was still taking pictures and stuff. He had two guys that he was training. Neither one of them made it. But they were going to have their first or second match ever against each other in the first or second match on this card. And I remember Marty put his arm around me and he kind of carried me over. He said, hey, would you mind watching my kid's match and tell me what you think of it? I'm 17 years old and I'm still taking pictures and ringouts and stuff. And I was like, holy shit. Like, this guy, respects me enough to want my opinion or whatever. He also almost fought Manny Fernandez for me one time. I will tell that story if you would like, but that's the moment that I felt brought in. So, by coincidence, that same very night, again, I had been. This is like the summer of 2001, so I was 16 or 17. I'd been coming to matches since like I was 10. So. Everybody around Greensboro knew me. Some of the guys, Rob, of course, but some of the guys that you'll see pop up every now and then, sort of random cameos, are guys that I've known since I was 10 years old. And I've been coming around forever, and I might have been bringing out things or just putting results online or some little menial task on the show, and I'm just hanging out like I always am. And Manny Fernandez, again, who's known me since I was 10, just being Manny, just looks up and goes, "Fuck you doing back here?" Oh, shit. And I was like, well, Chris said it was okay. That's the guy who running the show. And Manny looks at me, stone cold. He goes, "It's in Chris's locker room. This is my fucking locker room. You need to get the fuck out." I'm fucking white as it goes. And I walk out to my seat with my friends. And they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "No, Manny just threw me out of the fucking locker room." And they're like, "Get the fuck out of here." Because again, I know Manny since I was 11 or 12 years old. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what's up. About, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, I hear uproarious laughter behind me. And I turn around, Manny is sticking his head through the curtain. Like, "Get the fuck back here. You know I love you, man." And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I get back there, Manny puts his arm around me. He's like, "I'm just fucking with you, kid," and walks off. Champagne walks up to me. He goes, "Brad, I almost got my ass whooped for you." And I was like, what? He goes, man, Manny threw you out. It was dead quiet. Everybody's looking at each other. And Manny goes, well, somebody want to put that kid over? I thought about it. I was like, oh, I'm about to get my ass whooped. So I stood up to Manny and I said, yeah, I'll put that kid over. I like that kid. Manny stands up, gets right in Champagne's face and goes, well, hell, I was just fucking with him. Bring it back in here. So that's my Manny Fernandez story. Everyone should have one.
Wonderful.
Little Rec Center, you might have been there, Bruce.
I got.
Yes, my dear.
This is Stuttsy on Twitter.
This is Stuttsy on Twitter. I like your name.
Can you talk about the Matty D send-off?
Oh, jeez.
Ooh, that's one of my favorite moments in CWF history. Yeah, nobody on any TV show got as good a send-off as Matty D got. So for anyone that has not seen him in the modern era, he usually just does Battlecade in the worldwide era. But Matty D was like one of my best friends and one of your best friends, but more importantly, was a very entertaining, just sweetheart of a guy, down to do whatever. And I'm probably not even doing him justice in that explanation, but he's just the coolest guy. And so Battlecade 13, 14, one of those was going to be his last night. And it's himself, Richards, and Donnie in a triple threat match. They had all been partners before with me managing them. By the way, again, this is more insight than I would normally give. Richards and Donnie both adamantly refused to win that match and said they would not participate unless Matty won. Because I was going to put, I think, you over. And because you had just turned heel. Richards had just gone heel not tremendously long ago. But anyway, they both said, no, we'll put Matty over. So not only does he get to win his final match, but in the era of Grant's rigidly timed shows, Matty goes like 12 minutes over just singing and dancing his way around the building to Oh Sherry by Journey. And Grant is like loving it. And I'm watching all this unfold. And if anybody else had gone 12 minutes over, Grant literally would have thrown the camera at their skull like a blunt instrument. And Matty goes 12 minutes over on Battlecade, the night that we always go over anyway. And everyone just loved it and lost it and had a ball. And Grant can talk about it now, but Matty, if you're listening to this, you probably are because you keep up with all our stuff. We love you and we need you to come back soon. And hey, if I see you tomorrow, cool.
No, I'm tired of Matty's returns and farewells, so I cry every time. I love Matty.
I don't think I cried. I made it. No, I did. I'm right here, and I'm opening the ropes for him, and I tear up a little bit, and I think you caught it on camera. Because, yeah, I was going to hold the ropes open for him, and then he did like another 2 minutes of running around, singing and dancing. It's literally one of my favorite moments. I think he closed the episode. I had to. If we even had Worldwide then.
We didn't have Worldwide yet. But no, he does that Oh Sherry song. He gets up with me earlier in the week and says, I want Oh Sherry. I listen to Oh Sherry, like, this song's got like 45-second lead in. This ain't happening. So, but then, like, he's like, no, it's okay. So just started, whatever. So we were doing Oh Sherry, and like, in the moment, and you feel the music and whatnot. It's the Matty farewell, and everyone's falling. I look over at my kid; he's falling. It's such an emotional thing. And then I have it on my iPod now because I use it at the show. And then it comes on in the car like a month later. My kid starts bawling again because it's the Matty send off. So a year later at Battlecade, Matty's going to do the big return, and like it's completely kayfabe from everybody, and it's lights out. The music hits, Matty storms out, it's a great moment. I look over at my kid's now crying because Matty's back, and now I'm crying again. I'm like, stay away, Matty. I can't emotionally deal with this anymore.
I can't remember if that is a specific instance of this or not, but the guys will tell you, there are moments where me and Grant will leave something off the sheet, and it will just say, like, Marcellus King versus blank space or whoever.
Like tomorrow's finish.
Ooh. Where, and I think that may be one of those moments where nobody really, obviously they saw him, but nobody really knew he was coming. There's a great shot of that moment. Lee Valiant's in the ring, and Matty's going to come fight Lee, and the lights come up, and Matty's right about here, and the shot is Grant's camera, and you see the floor cameraman fist up in the air. He didn't know what was happening. The floor camera guy is marking out, and like that's some of the cool stuff of what we do.
Yeah, if me and Stuttsy don't have to tell people, then we ain't telling people.
No, hell no.
So on the subject of the departure of fatback members,
I thought you were going to say on the subject of tomorrow night's finish, and you were going to be real. I wasn't prepared for that, but go ahead.
did Corey Edsel actually get signed by WWE?
Yes, he did.
What?
So, everything that I'm about to tell you is 100% true. So, OVW has an open tryout in like the first weekend of December 2010. And Johnny Yates is going to be there, John Laurinaitis, and Corey Edsel, Marcellus King, who was champion here for a little while, and two other guys take a car and they go up to OVW for the seminar. And I had told Corey for years, bro, if you will just send the tape in of you running the ropes, they will hire you. Because there's not a lot of 400-pound guys that can move like him on Earth, much less the rest.
Yeah, I was just saying, if you're not familiar with Corey, like, Corey about to, like, legit move solid and do it, like, he was, and still is, a phenomenal worker, especially with his size.
Smart guy, too.
Yeah.
Really smart for finishes and for business and everything. And so 4 guys from North Carolina go up, and it's like Friday and a Saturday camp at OVW. And John Laurinaitis is there as a guest. And he calls me, I can't remember if it was Saturday morning or Sunday morning.
Sunday.
But he calls me and says, yeah, they're going to sign me. And I was like, I mean, of course they are. I've been telling you this for 10 years. And Monday Night Raw is in Louisville. And so they're going to put him up in a room and everything, and they're going to have him do Raw in Louisville. And there's one thing I remember about this show. You can look up the air date or whatever if you want to. Tyson Kidd was getting a little bit of a heel push, and Tyson Kidd had this bodyguard. It was like 7 feet tall, and he's only on like 1 episode of Raw.
Jackson friggin' Andrews.
There you go. That was the Raw that Corey Edsel was at. Because he also called me and asked me if I had watched the show, and I said yes. And he goes, bro, Tyson Kidd's bodyguard is fucking atrocious. And I was like, yeah? He goes, dude, I sat there for half an hour as they tried to teach him the F5. And they tried to teach him the old Malenko Gutbuster. And he couldn't do any of it. And if you watch the show, Tyson Kidd wrestles, I think, Harry Smith, and the big-ass bodyguard comes in and gives him a short clothesline. That was the only thing that this fucking guy could do right, apparently. Per Corey. But anyway, so he goes to TV and everything, and I'm like, so I'm kind of touching base with him. He goes, yeah, they're fucking signing me. I'm like, this is fucking great. It was the December before WrestleMania was in Atlanta. So that'd be 2010?
Yeah, 2010.
Okay. Because he was going to start the Monday after WrestleMania in Atlanta. Yeah, I think that's right. So, they tell him whatever they tell him, and he gets down there and like destroys his fucking ankle, like immediately. And he had back problems forever, and he had knee problems forever, and now he has like Matt Sydal mangled his ankle, and it just kind of never got rolling again after that. And I think he has told me since then that if the developmental system were like it was now, then he thinks he could have prospered in it, but it was just a lot of bullshit. It's kind of how he's put it in the past. That it just didn't really work out. And I think by May or June, I think he's back here doing the commissioner thing. And it was just one of those, you know how they say, if the stars align in just the right way, one of those deals where the stars aligned in all the wrong ways. But no, he was there for a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. And really, he's had a couple of little runs since then, but that was pretty much it for him wrestling full time every weekend at that point. Because he was just, that was another thing too, was he was just so beat up. His body was so beat up from years of doing this. That bump card is a real thing. And if you waste too many of them, not waste, but if you use too many of them on the indies, you pay for it.
I seem to remember that he left on very good terms, and Lauren Otis was like, "Let us know when you feel better, and we'll talk again." And that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it was left open, very open-ended.
Yeah, no, very much so. And that is one of those things. Yes.
So you guys are talking about emotion a question or two back. My favorite Trevor Lee title defense was against Nick Richards this year. Were you guys expecting that type of reaction from Nick? Because it seemed like the audience really wanted him to win that title on that show.
That's an amazing question for the two people that you have up here. So again, I'm going to give you more insight than I normally give people, because fuck it, you're here. I didn't really want to do that match. I thought, more than any other Trevor Lee title defense, I thought the babyface dynamic, I just didn't see it. It was different than him wrestling Cedric. It was different than him wrestling Drew. There was just something about sort of two homegrown babyface guys. I don't know. There was just something about it that I wasn't quite sold on. Grant refused to take no for an answer and was like, "We're going to do this match and it's going to be awesome." And I'll let you take it from there.
I'm going to play off a little bit what you said first. I remember this moment, defer a little bit. Remember the moment in the Rumble a couple of years ago where we had designed it where Trevor would be in the ring by himself and the next entry would be Chet. And in my mind at the time, I thought people were going to pop huge for this dream match. And they shit on it because no one wanted to see Trevor fight Chet. Now, maybe this year they want to see it, maybe next year they want to see it. But at that time, they didn't want to see it. And I felt very strongly that they did want to see Trevor versus Nick. And we'd already set the plate to do it, and I felt we had the obligation to deliver after Nick had won the Weaver Cup. It was a natural match, and a lot of the uncertainty, I think the uncertainty will come to light a little bit more when Johnny D finishes Boys of Gibsonville documentary, because there was a aura of, or feeling of uncomfortability between Nick and Trevor, which that's their business, and it's Johnny D's business now. There was a tension between Nick and Trevor, and there was a legitimate concern from Stuttsy and others that we could be setting the plate for something bad to happen in the match. And I would not want to do that to anyone either.
Not bad like someone gets killed, but bad like someone who we have built up to be a top babyface gets left looking as less than that.
And I just felt very strongly that, well, one, we had to deliver the match. That was more than anything. I thought we had to deliver it after Nick won the Weaver Cup. And the second, I had no doubts that when it came go time that they were delivering the ring.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was worried about the quality or the content or anything like that of the match as much as is that.
Sure.
I hate that Triple H has co-opted this, but is that the best move for business? You know, that's the that was more my concern. And it turned out great. I thought it was a dope match that a lot of people remember very fondly. Yeah. So I'm very glad we did it.
I mean, me and Stuttsy argue a lot about stuff, and I'm so big on like if we kind of set the table, we have to pay off things that are set up. I hate unresolved issues and just moving on.
But were you expecting the reaction? Like it felt like they wanted Nick Richards to win that belt in that building.
I was not expecting it, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a 50-50 crowd. I didn't think they would be as much with Nick as they were, but it wasn't like a huge shock.
It definitely says something for not underestimating hometown guys who have been here for years and who have built that equity with the audience.
Piggybacking off that, Grant, you've listened to the after show pretty much since day one. And
Stuttsy never has.
Well, I mean, I
know you're not.
Anyway, during that era when the whole Absolute Justice thing was going on, and now that you said you never wanted to have the match, Brad, it kind of makes sense to me here. Is that why Trevor was kind of heelish during that entire storyline? Because I've always maintained the fact, and maybe I'm the only one that saw it. Everybody would come in the chat room and say I was full of it. Trevor was a heel during that storyline. Is that why?
No, that is not why. Trevor literally picks up the microphone and says whatever the hell he feels like saying, and that's what happened. I was sitting right over there, just as surprised as anyone else when Trevor kind of started veering in that direction. No. is short.
I mean, Trevor is always just himself.
Yeah,
like
he picks up the microphone after that match and goes, "Now I don't have to be an asshole to you anymore." Something to that effect.
I think. Look, I'm not just here like kissing top guy ass, but like Trevor genuinely is a really, really sharp guy, and he's really, really sharp about the business. And I think in his mind, that was just how that story needed to go. Like he felt like Nick Richards, the character, or whatever, needed to earn Trevor Lee, the character, whatever's respect. And the reality of that can be blurred in somewhere. And that was just sort of the artistic liberty that he took with it. No, I wasn't sitting back like, we're going to screw you kind of heel. That's a good observation because that's exactly what happened. But no, that was just his sort of feeling the moment.
I don't think he necessarily acted that much different than Nick match than against, say, the Jesse Adler match. You know, it was a very similar dynamic. You know, it's just Trevor being Trevor.
He's the cocksure champion. I mean,
very much so.
You know,
and a human being in general.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, and I admit that partially I'm biased because I was in the building for it, and also because, like you, I'm a Chip Day guy. But being in the building for that match, that to me felt kind of like a transformative match in some ways for Trevor Lee's title reign. Just in terms of, I think at that point, the idea that he could lose to somebody who was not a heel, I think, entered the minds of I mean, I didn't think there was any chance he was going to lose to Chip, but I believed for about 3 minutes, and that's all you need in a match like that. And I guess my question is, A, do you agree with that observation, or you think I'm a crazy person?
No, I agree with that observation.
And secondly, and maybe more importantly, for the people who weren't here for that, me and Grant have talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I love Worldwide, but I don't know that the feeling in the building for that match could possibly be transferred to what people saw visually on tape. So I would like, from your perspective, I would like to hear how you guys felt.
I was happy with it. I thought it translated as well as it could, but yeah, you were not going to get the full vibe.
Well, I mean, you can't get that at most matches live, here or anywhere else. I mean, it's just something you feel live that you don't feel elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree.
Beautiful match.
No, I thought so too. And yeah, I've always been a Chip Day guy, and I've always wanted to see more of him here. And yeah, I thought it's weird how real things can be, in as much as without it having to be said, he appreciated being given the platform to do that, and I appreciated how hard he worked. And there was, I can't remember if it's on the final draft. It
probably is. But
there was
a real moment of us hugging up here, and
That's a real
and that's a real moment of him crying on my shoulder, saying thank you. And he's saying thank you, man. You know, y'all killed it. That's some of the good stuff of what we do is when we can produce stuff like that. Not matches necessarily, but we can produce a moment and an emotion like that. Yeah. Yes, John and Pete.
What are some of those moments? For both.
Emotionally satisfying moments?
Yeah, where you just were like, where you needed a moment after a moment in this.
Bruce wrote an article about this one, but I love the Lance Lou Rumble win. When it gets down to him and Lee Valiant, and we've positioned Lee as sort of the new big baddie for the territory, and it certainly seems reasonable that Lee would win this Rumble, and then as Bruce so eloquently put it, Lance just twists and twerks in a certain way and gets Lee over the top rope, and everybody's on their feet. I thought that was a really good one.
And I would even say the Smith Garrett Rumble win as well.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Look at all these Rumble finishes, guys.
Yeah, Smith Garrett's emotion, is real as it gets, and it's just one of those beautiful little moments in time. It's you know when it's happening. It's special.
Do I tell that story for people that don't know it, or do I leave that to the event? Tell the story.
Everybody knows the story, don't they?
Does anybody? Do people? Okay, you don't know the story?
Tell the story.
Really? Okay.
Tell the story.
So is he still here? Okay. So 100% true story. Smith Garrett did not know he was winning that Rumble.
Let's back up before that.
Okay, let's back up before that.
It was like I want to say like the first or second. Well, maybe not first. One of the very first episodes of Worldwide, we had a match. It was a multi-man tag match, and Smith Garrett got legitimately knocked out. So he was out for several months. So that kind of set the plate for the Rumble, for his return to the Rumble.
Yes, he was going to come back as a surprise in the Rumble, and as far as he knew, he was going to come back as a surprise in the Rumble and be the last one left to be eliminated by eventual winner John Schuyler. And we thought it would be cool if we did not tell Smith he was winning. So we got to the building and we pulled aside John and we kind of filled him in on it. John Schuyler is amazing and a consummate pro and one of my favorite human beings, and he was completely on board. And so he and Smith constructed a finish with a big false finish right before, where it looked like John got eliminated, and then Smith would turn around and super kick or the speeder or whatever it was going to be, and then get chucked out. And Smith hits that big forearm. John's going to catch himself on the apron and then spring back in or whatever, and John right to the floor, and you get that moment on the film of Smith's face and everybody. And I thought that was a really cool moment for a couple of reasons, because I felt like he was obviously he was a surprise, so nobody really knew he was in it for sure. But even if he had not been a surprise, he was an unlikely winner. And I always love when we have the opportunity to do that. When we have the opportunity to create a moment and create an opportunity for someone new to skyrocket or even just to shine or whatever. So I distinctly remember we were in my living room at my house, and I'm on one couch and Grant is on another couch, and we're just, it looks like the SNL writer's room. We're just spitting ideas for this Rumble back and forth. And I leaned forward in my recliner and I said, "Oh shit, Smith Barrett wins this year, doesn't he?" And Grant leaned forward, he goes, "Yes, fuck, he does." And we just kind of put it together backwards from there. So, yeah, we're good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, someone out in the stands for that match, I really thought what made it was Smith's reaction. It was a legitimate reaction of joy and oh my God, because it was a gift that you guys gave him.
Yeah.
And he realized it, and it fit with the story, it fit with just the storyline of the match and all that. It was one of the great winning babyface reactions I've ever seen. It was just,
No, it's beautiful. It's
really cool.
It's a testament to everyone that was involved to help produce that moment. Yes?
You mentioned Lance Lew just a few minutes ago, and I think it was earlier, maybe this week on Twitter, maybe it was you, or someone said within CWF that if he wouldn't win a different direction, the way he's going now, that you would perceive him having a bigger role in CWF.
Yes.
Including Lance. Who are some other guys who spun off and went other directions that you can still see who would be having a bigger role right now in current day CWF?
That's a good question.
You count me.
I feel like I've got most of the people that I want. I've gotten for some level of the run.
Because even someone like Caprice who left, we've still been able to do stuff.
Right.
Caprice has obviously been a champ here, but it wasn't.
I'm struggling to think of someone who fits that specific definition. There are more people like a Chip Day or like a John Schuyler, or for that matter, like a Lance Lew, who I wish I had more dates on in general. But it wasn't like they were here for a long period of time and we didn't get to fully capitalize on it. Cedric Alexander would be that person if I had not gotten that last run in where he won the television title and he won the Ultra J title and had some really, really great memorable matches. Had I not gotten those last 8 or 10 dates on Cedric, he would be that person who I didn't get to use as fully. Oh, Manny Garcia. Yeah, Manny Garcia. Obviously, but good for him, obviously. He's
doing How quick was the turnaround for Manny from CWF 2 where he was down 2 years?
A year, right?
About a year and a half. There's a famous quote I always like that Jim Cornette said. The first time he saw Batista in the ring at OVW, he told everybody, "Be nice to Dave so that we can all go stay at his mansion sometime." And the first time I saw Manny, I literally turned to whoever happened to be at practice that day and I said, "Everybody be nice to Levis so that we can all go stay at his house in Florida sometime." Scott Dawson of the Revival, who I love, and who's an old friend, I want to make abundantly clear that this is not the circumstances that led to his signing. This is just a conversation. He had hit me up one day and said, "Hey, is there anybody out there that we should, have our eyes on?" And I said, "Yes, I got a guy that checks off everything you want." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "He's tall, he's foreman, he's bilingual, he's college educated, he's well spoken, he's a good athlete, he looks good." I mean, I ran through everything, and KC goes, "Yeah, that's everything we're looking for." And again, I want to make clear that was not what got the opportunity. He got the opportunity on his own, but I was very confident that was someone who was not going to be around for the long haul here. And it was great, but sometimes you just sort of have that feeling about some people that, again, that you just look at it, he was everything they're looking for.
We can also put Manny over because he was already moved and living in Florida before he dropped our TV title and came back up here to drop it.
Yeah, he came back to drop the title. Cedric technically too. Cedric was already gone, and I got. It wasn't even technically. I don't think we ever acknowledged this on Worldwide, but it wasn't even technically a CWF show. It was a benefit show, a charity gig, and it was just the last day I could get on Cedric to wrestle Chet in the main event. And I hit up the guy that was running the benefit. I was like, "Hey man, can you do me a favor?" And he goes, "Sure man, what do you need?" I said, "Can I bring Cedric and Chet to come wrestle on your show? I need to get the Social Day title back." And he goes, "You're doing me a favor?" He goes, "Yeah, you can do me that favor." But no, that really, I feel like we have a great relationship with a lot of guys, and a lot of guys really value what we do here. The Carnies were genuinely conflicted about whether they should honor their thing that they gave me for tomorrow, or go take this opportunity at CZW to get to have this match with the Chris brothers they've always wanted to have, that I guess now is in jeopardy of happening. But I told them, go. You've done plenty of favors for me, and you'll do plenty of favors for me and us in the future. Go do it. But it spoke a lot to me, those guys as real people, being conflicted about not wanting to cancel on us or our fans, even to have this match that they wanted to have forever.
Even more than you probably know. Believe
me. Yeah. No, I do believe that. But like I say, I feel like we have a really good relationship with a lot of people who it never ceases to amaze me how much they value what we do here. Yes.
I had a question. We've got like a million matches that we wish we didn't run. Is there a match that you had a chance to run that you wish we could go back and run?
And a match that we could have ran but did not.
That in retrospect you wish we had?
I mean, it's probably kind of a generic answer, but we never officially did the Trevor, Cedric, Drew three-way that PWG did. Maybe it had already been done, but I probably would have done that. Trevor and Drew against the Carnies, I would have liked to have done. At one point, that was penciled in for one draft of the tag tournament, and schedules and all kinds of other stuff happened. I'll think of some more.
The first one I thought of was I always want to do Drew, Andrew Everett, and Chet for the Ultra J.
Oh yeah, or just in general. Yeah, or just in general.
For me, it would have been Trevor and Ray for the belt.
Kendra?
Yeah.
Sure. Right. Yeah, no, we would have got along. We would have gotten around to that at some point, because I love on like the first year or so of Worldwide, there's a Trevor and Drew against Eric and Ray tag match that I love. And I think there's a Drew and Jesse Adler against Eric and Ray tag match that I love. And I feel like there's one more weird combination. Maybe Trevor and Chet dropping the belts to Eric and Ray. Yeah, there's 3 great Eric and Ray tag matches against those guys. That match definitely would have happened. One that I've always wanted to do, that I may get around to doing at some point if everything can line up, I've always wanted to do Roy Wilkins against Nasher Hatfield. That's one that I've always wanted to do.
Right.
So maybe I'll get around to doing that one at some point. I don't know how many Star fans we got, but I've always wanted to do that one. So maybe one day we'll get around to doing that one. That's a really good question. There probably are more. Ray Kandrack against Zane Dawson we never got around to. I always wanted to do that one when Zane was on his singles run. I always wanted to. Did we do the Dawsons against Eric and Ray as a team? Because that would have been one of them. That would have been one of them too. But yeah, Eric when Zane was the PWI champion, Zane against Ray, I always wanted to do. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of them. There's probably a bunch of them, but that's the short of it.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
As you know, I'm a big proponent of women's wrestling, and I think it's getting better and better. It's not where it needs to be or where it's going to eventually be. But
I am too, if anyone on Twitter is listening.
Right. Are there any plans or thoughts going forward of having more matches involving females and maybe developing some storylines?
There you go.
Absolutely thoughts. We need more girls who are geographically convenient for us to sort of fit within the budget. And I don't, there's a lot of girls I'd love to use, and if they happen to be passing through Greensboro and want to, I'd love to use, but just like budgetary wise, they really need to be geographically convenient for us, or just here for something else, and we can piggyback off that. But yeah, there's a ton of girls I would love to use. I think Allie Cat's tremendous. I think Rachel Ellering's tremendous. I don't think there's ever been a crop quite like there is now. And I thought, the Sarah Del Rey, Allison Danger sort of generation, and we actually did get those girls here coming pretty through. We did have some connections that we were able to use to get. Sarah Del Rey was on the show several times, and Serena Deeb and a couple of others. I would love to build those relationships back up and make women's wrestling a little bit more a part of CWF, quite frankly, speaking candidly, and certainly no offense if any of them happen to hear this. A lot of the girls who are geographically convenient are really inexperienced and are not. They don't get the opportunity to work very often or work every weekend. So I would be interested certainly in helping to develop that. But there's a kind of a shortage in North Carolina or in the Carolinas right now of sort of ready for prime time girls, as it were.
Well, I think it is, and I follow women's wrestling fairly closely. I think there are certain areas where they tend to be more concentrated, the women that are at the higher levels.
Absolutely.
I did get a lot of good comments when you had Allie Cat on a few weeks ago. I had a lot of people say, "Hey, I thought she looked good, and I thought she was really accepted by the fans." And I think she's one that's.
Yeah, let me follow up with that, Papa. How did she get booked? Because she's a Texas girl, about to move, but how did that booking come across?
They had the idea, and I say they because I was actually out of the state when it happened. They had the idea to do a little seminar and an open tryout in the afternoon before the night that match was taped for Worldwide. They had a seminar and sort of an open tryout, and she was in Northern Virginia the night before, so it was convenient for her to come through. And again, I was in Vegas with Papa that weekend, but was told that she pretty much stole the show at the seminar and was the star of the seminar. And I think she's dope. I think she's so cool. So there's a lot of, that's how that came about. And that could be, if Nova Pro continues on Friday nights, that is a thing that could happen more in the future, potentially, sort of piggybacking off them a little bit and utilizing some of those girls. Because there's a lot of great girls out there. Shout out to Priscilla Kelly if she happens to hear this, because she's come up several times for basically a favor, or basically just to be part of what we do here, and I certainly appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate everybody that goes out of their way to be a part of what we do here.
Well, Allie Cat is moving closer.
St. Louis doesn't really help me that much.
No, but
I was hoping she was going to move to like DC.
But she has to make a loop. That's a possibility, and I guarantee you, Big
Mike's
going to insist that she get out and work.
Might make it easier for me to get my Kurt Stallion Chet Sterling match out.
That's right.
That's
right.
That would be good.
Because that's two travelers right there, her and Kurt. So.
Yes.
Talk a lot about people that you've enjoyed working with. You don't have to name any names, but any good stories about people that you wouldn't bring back?
Why would we not name names?
Name names. Please name names.
I mean, Kathy.
Chappie, yeah, that's the first one. And there are names.
Oh yeah, I can't name that one.
Fucking Q&A.
I live with her. Come on.
Oh, her.
Come on, grow some stones.
I did think about her versus Sis one time, just to see how that pitch would have gone.
I'm not actually sure which she you mean.
Who versus this?
People, man. I can, and listen,
Yamaha.
Yamaha. This sounds like a real political answer, and I'm not really that political of a person, but I can honestly say I have not had that many true, adversarial relationships with people. If it was someone that I wasn't that interested in using, I just kind of stopped using them or beat them until they got the hint that they weren't going to get anywhere or whatever.
Oh, that guy, yeah. The former RGL champ there.
But,
Just happy, bro.
crazy day. What was the specific question, someone that we would not want back?
Yes. Mark Van Hook?
I would love to see Mark Van Hook back. Immediately.
Kirby Mack is number one on mine. Fuck Kirby Mack. I hope he is listening. He was horrible then. I'm sure he's horrible now. The worst. TJ was alright. Especially when he wasn't TJ. When he was Dexter, he was alright. Fuck Kirby. A few local guys nobody would have heard of. What was that?
How do you feel about Kirby, Brad?
Never heard of him. He'd be pretty high up on mine.
Florida guy.
What?
That Florida guy from that tag that recently.
Oh, the guy that threw my fucking microphone. Yes. AC Hawks.
Yes.
I don't hate him, but Trevor was like, "You're done here because you threw the microphone." So I mean, I don't hate him, but he threw the microphone like he was the fucking Rock on Monday Night Raw and it landed 6 inches away from me and shattered on the ground. And so I heard secondhand. I don't know that this is correct, but I heard. But Trevor Lee later sat him down after that, and he goes, "I just want you to know that you broke our fucking microphone, and that microphone is worth more money than you'll ever make as a wrestler in your career." I had no problem with the guy, but Trevor basically gave him his pink slip, and he still works for Nova Pro, and I've seen him since then. But yeah, Trevor was like, "Yeah, I'm not, no, fuck that guy."
How about,
I was fine with it.
How about that slow counting referee that you had on Worldwide a few weeks back?
He's a trainee.
Was that
He's trainee.
I thought you meant the Logan LaRoe referee.
No, he's a trainee. I'll be the first to bury somebody.
You gotta be more specific when we talk about slow referees.
Why did you touch me?
Yes.
Since it's breaking down anyway, can we hear some Cool J stories?
Okay, I gotta tell you, Stuttsy doesn't care enough about Cool J to give you a story.
Well,
No, I want to be funny.
We don't care about broadcast.
I don't have any Cool J stories. But
We're past the line. A couple of other trainees have some Cool J stories.
there may have been an incident. It's not that story. There may have been an incident where a bunch of us went to Buffalo Wild Wings after a show, and there was UFC going on. It may have been the pump fight, but a bunch of us went to Buffalo Wild Wings, a big group of like 12 or 15 of us, and they had specifically taken care of us. And they were like, "Yo, it's gonna be packed. We're gonna hold the back room or whatever for y'all, or the outside area, whatever it was. And if you got a crew of like 15 or 16, we're gonna take care of it." And they did. And there may have been a person, maybe a former Rumble winner, and former television champion, who had helped organize that. He may have won the title from Cedric Alexander and then lost it to Eric Andrews. That's possible. He may have been kind of the one that helped set that up. And then, as we're all leaving, the waitress who he had talked to comes up and says, "Hey, one of your people didn't pay his tab." And he goes, "Really?" And he goes, "So who was this?" And after a moment or two of investigation, it came to light that it was Cool J that had not paid his tab. And so we were kind of outside congregating, and this person, who might be a former Rumble winner and television champion, said, "Hey man, get inside and pay your bill." He goes, "Oh, I was going to. He goes, "Well, there's no going to. Fucking, get there and do it." And words may have been exchanged, and the person of the two who has the least experience in the business may have overplayed their hand a little bit and may have gotten headbutted in the face outside of the Buffalo Wild Wings, to the point that I'm watching this go down and then BAM! And I was like, oh shit. And brother is like hard way, like blood is dripping down his face. And the person who might be a former television champion, he goes, "Now get in there and pick your goddamn bill." So he did. And now it's down to like 3 of us outside, and I kind of feel an obligation as sort of the senior member of the staff to make sure these two don't, come to blows any further or whatever. And they have a conversation that I'm not privy to, and everything is left fine. You were making us look bad. You were fucking, blah blah blah. And so now it's just me and Cool J. The other guy leaves, and I'm just like, "Dude, you good to drive or what?" He's like, "I think I got a concussion." "Do you have a concussion?" He goes, "Yeah, man, I think I got a concussion." "Where do you live?" And he tells me like a part of Burlington that's like 25 miles away. So the short version of the story is the rent ends up on me because I got to fucking drive Cool J home because Smith Garrett gave him a concussion. Yes.
I was here the night the sun was fell down.
That was a Nick Richards special, if I recall.
Slade was the last guy. Slade was the last order.
Slade, Nick, same difference.
Well,
actually, they do have one important difference.
One.
Yes.
Is that ever going to be replaced? I feel like Jinx doesn't look the same now.
I hope so.
It will be replaced the second the owner of this building wants to replace it. I know you've told the story a million times, but it is a guaranteed crowd pleaser and does not bury anyone. So, would you like to enlighten them with the $90 Sheik Lumpkin story?
That's my favorite story.
I'm going to repeat that.
Okay. So, I was not there for this. This is a story that I heard secondhand.
Bullshit.
No, I really wasn't. So, is this a true story? Have we ever? Okay.
Apparently.
Okay. Because I wasn't there for it.
I was and didn't even know it.
Right. That's the beauty of the story. So, we had a heel manager for a while. Did a sheep gimmick called Sheik Lumpkin. Wore the little iron sheep gimmick on his head and everything.
White guy, by the way.
And as part of the deal, someone had made up some like counterfeit money that had his picture on it, so that he could like light the cigar with a $100 bill and all that kind of stuff. Oil money, as it were. So a group of people go out to a nightclub after one of the shows, and one of the persons who Lumpkin was managing at the time has got this money that's got Sheik Lumpkin's face on it.
Oh no.
So they decide that they're going to send someone. The version of the story that I had always heard was that it was $90. They're going to fold the bill over, face down, hand him this, and go, Donnie, go up to the bar, get us drinks, get yourself something, and then bring us back the change. So Donnie goes up to the bar with this $100 bill that's got Lumpkin's face on it, folded over, and Donnie's gone for like 15, 20 minutes. It's the way I've always heard the story. And the guys are like, oh man, we need to get out of here. We set this dude up for failure. 15, 20 minutes later, here comes Donnie with 3 drinks and $79 in change. Upon which time, the 2 people who perpetrated this guzzled down the drinks, split the money, and left the bar. Which, by the way, Lumpkin was in the bar. The Sheik was in the bar. If they had discovered this $100 bill with this guy's face on it and scanned the crowd, they would have seen the guy whose face was on the money.
Frank, a big fan of your work.
I was not there for that story, but it's still my favorite story, nonetheless. Questions?
Joe.
Oh, Joe.
Yes.
I want to go back to when you first got the book.
So would I. Charles!
What? Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
For those who haven't heard Johnny P's excellent podcasting, you need to go listen to that series. He was doing an interview with you and talked about how you very first got the book. What were, and I'm not trying to make you bury anybody here, but what were some of the things when you got the book that you said, this needs to change? Give us 3 examples of things that you said, this absolutely needs to change if this company is going to go forward under my direction.
Well, that makes it sound very official, like I wield much more power than I do. The rug could be pulled out from under me at any moment, but I appreciate you thinking that I wield so much power. I guess the first thing was the regime before me had basically built everything around Rick Converse as the perennial champion. I think he ended up being like a 6-time champion or something like that. A lot of long runs too. Some short ones, but a lot of long runs. So one of the first things I said was and I love Rick Converse, but I said we have to get away from this stigma of anytime anyone new gets the belt, or anyone period gets the belt, they drop it to Rick. It always comes back to Rick. That was probably the first thing that I wanted to kind of get away from it. I love Rick as a person and as a talent and a team player, and he was the most qualified person to leave the locker room. It was just one of those, sort of like the Cena or maybe now the Roman Reigns thing. I didn't want to have that stigma. That was one. There were too many managers, myself included. I actually wanted to end Fat Back and pull myself from ringside 2.5 years before it happened. I basically wanted to do it right away. And at the time, it was deemed that we had a hot act and we had a following, and it shouldn't get killed off just because I was put in a position. But at the time, I was a manager. Bobby O'Neill managed Evan Banks. William Cross managed Converse, and Coach was doing whatever Coach was doing at the time. He may have even something generic yet. But I thought 4 managers in a territory the size was too much, and I knew I wanted to basically whittle it down to 1, which is basically what I've done over time. That's the first 2 I think of. There might be a third, but that's the first 2 I think of.
Well, I think the biggest change when Brad took over the book was previously every show was booked around the main event. And Brad, and I understand from a booker's perspective on the independent level, you do want to put most of your eggs in the basket in the main event, and whatever happens in the undercard happens with the undercard. Well, Brad gave the undercard something to sink their teeth into, so they just weren't showing up and working random matches. They try to give everybody a little bit something extra and more continuity from show to show as far as the undercard goes.
Yeah, I would say that was a concern, for sure.
A follow-up to that would be, what were some of the things that were going on during the current regime that you said this has to stay like it is going forward? If that makes any sense.
Selling tickets.
Well,
I'm trying to remember if this was the case when I took over or shortly thereafter. But one of the things that I've always said is I actually really think Coach adds a lot to Roy Wilkins in particular, and I've been very against any suggestion that ever came up to break up that duo in particular. I think with Roy, when I took over, Roy, if my memory serves me correctly, or shortly thereafter, but I think if nothing else and no one else, I really like the pairing of Coach with Roy Wilkins. Things that I wanted to keep the same.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
What? It says that a lot of these shows run together for me, is what it says. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I don't remember like any tag teams that I wanted especially to break up or anything like that. It was just it just kind of put people where I felt they belong.
We're getting a 5-minute wrap up.
Who the fuck do you think you are, Johnny Lee?
Leave him one more.
You think you're Grant? You can't just be giving time cues from the apron and then forgetting to edit them off of Worldwide later.
Hey, not my fault. I should have gone home.
A fun worldwide drinking game is to watch Worldwide, and every time you hear a deep guttural "go home," take a shot.
Or every time you hear Grant laugh, take a shot.
I don't laugh that much. I'm usually pretty pissed.
Last call. I'll take a couple of questions. Yes.
What about like Eric Royal, who Jill and I were talking. We think he's probably one of the most versatile guys on the roster here.
I agree.
How hard is it to book him? Because you can work him in tags, he can do brawling, he can work a mat-based game, he can talk, he could,
I actually just had this conversation with someone this week that he's kind of he's a great utility player, but are we getting as much out of him as a utility player as say Nova Pro is?
But Eric had this huge run pre-worldwide era, so it's not like we haven't utilized him in that way. But,
right.
Ebb and flow.
Yeah, very much. Ebb and flow. And I think that's something that, actually going back to your question, that's something that the old regime was different than me at, is kind of pulling something back and before the act had completely exhausted itself. Kind of knowing that, all right, we're gonna go all in on this guy for the next 6 or 12 months until we get to this point, and we're gonna kind of, ebb and flow. That's right to say. Last round of questions.
Yes. No, everybody seems good.
That's okay. We're not listening, Johnny. Go ahead.
Not really a question. I just wanted to. I like the way y'all make things seem important. When I first started watching Worldwide, the reaction Snooty Fox was getting, I thought he was the number 2 guy in the company.
Sure.
So y'all make everything seem important. It's not just a regular indie show where it's just a bunch of matches, no story.
That's definitely the goal, is not to be a bunch of matches, no story.
So, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, what? Last call? What?
Can you please tell the Yamaha and the tent story?
Ooh. Well, I promised to tell the Nick Tozawa story on Twitter, so I may close with that if there's no other questions.
That's a classic story.
That's a pretty good closer.
That's a pretty good one.
Okay.
There's a lot of other things around that story that make me.
All right.
No one has any other questions.
Last call for questions, and then I'll close on that story. If you got a question, raise your hand. Yes.
So we're talking about some of the differences between previous booking and your booking, but I'm curious, how did your booking change when you started growing this audience that was outside of the room with Worldwide? How do you balance sort of, making the product for people watching on Worldwide versus people who are in the room?
We just do what we like.
That actually is a constant conversation that management has with me. Am I putting too much emphasis on the worldwide audience, too little emphasis? I don't think the argument is ever that I'm putting too little emphasis on the people in the room, but am I putting too much emphasis on the worldwide audience? I like, in my opinion, and they can't all be home runs, but in my opinion, something that is going to play really well on Worldwide is probably going to play well in the room also. Like Stokely against White Mike is a great example. Like, I knew that match, or even the Faye Jackson match that just happened. I knew that match would play really well online, but I also felt very confident that it would play well in the room. So I try to always sort of keep that in mind and not, I never ever, the people in the room are always at the forefront of my mind, even if something clearly has a broader appeal online, if that makes sense.
I think two good examples are Rob McBride and Dirty Daddy, because people love Rob McBride, and maybe he doesn't necessarily translate to a certain fan online, and then Dirty Daddy's gimmick, no one in the audience has a clue what the fuck's going on with Dirty Daddy's gimmick, but everyone online kind of pops for it.
I never even thought about that, but if you just come to the building and don't watch Worldwide, we never actually do anything with Dirty's gimmick. It's all like post-produced commentary, drop-ins, or whatever. So if you just come to the live events, you have no clue that that's even Dirty's gimmick. And that never even like dawned on me until fairly recently. Last call for questions. Boys in the back have been pretty silent. I'm disappointed in you. Gonna say that. Last call for questions.
He asked my question.
What's your fucking question? Mainly just you.
I think there's far more people that have heat with us than we have heat with them.
Alright, so I'll close with this story. What? So, once again, WrestleMania in Atlanta. On the way down, Dragon Gate USA runs a show in our old venue, the venue that we were in before this one. And it's like the Thursday before WrestleMania, something like that, or Friday, on the way down to Atlanta. Was anybody there? Was anybody there? Other than like the boys? Was anybody there? Okay. Who said that?
Mecca.
You're one of the boys. So they're going to do a show that night, and they're going to do a seminar that day with like the top guys from Japan and a couple of other guys, whoever was on the Dragon Gate crew at that point. The person who I distinctly remember being there was Tozawa. And he was kind of helping run the camp a little bit. And the camp is like 2 or 3 hours of them doing drills and doing cardio and stuff. And then they're going to pair up for matches. And I had not realized it until they started pairing up for matches that there were like 25 people at the camp, which is obviously, for us math makers, an odd number of people. So everybody's pairing up for matches, and they're pairing up with like who they think they're going to have the best match with. And I'm watching this happen. I'm watching this happen from the bleachers. And as I'm watching it, it's becoming apparent to me that Nick is going to be the last guy picked for kickball in this exercise. So I'm watching this, and Nick is just kind of standing there with his hands in his pockets, very Nick Richards. And all of a sudden, from the bleachers, I see Tozawa comes over and starts talking to Nick. And I'm watching this unfold, and I lean over to whoever's next to me, and I was like, yo, I think Nick is about to wrestle Tozawa. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, go over there. And if you've been doing this for any length of time, you can kind of know what calling spots looks like. And that's what that conversation looked like. It looked like they were calling spots. And I'm like, yo, Tozawa's going to wrestle Nick. And it becomes a little bit of a scuttlebutt in the bleachers. Tozawa's about to wrestle Nick. So, I can't remember what match it was out of the, what's that, 12 matches, 13 matches, whatever. Little 5-minute matches. Anyway, my prophecy comes true. And it now has become abundantly clear that Tozawa is going to wrestle Nick. And it's a curtain sellout. Everybody's in the bleachers watching this. Bell rings, and the important people from Dragon Gate USA are around ringside watching or whatever. Tozawa carries Nick to the most beautiful 4-minute match you've ever seen in your life. I mean, it was crisp, it was on the money, Nick hung in there with him. I think Tozawa used an RKO to beat Richards. It was beautiful. Bam! 1, 2, 3. I was like, holy shit, that was dope. Nick rolls out of the ring and immediately pukes on Gabe Sapolsky. Immediately pukes all over Gabe Sapolsky.
We've all been there. Nice work.
Like, you ever see 40-year-old version when they're in the car? Boom! Just blast Dave.
Like, Gabe never saw it coming.
No.
I remember Gabe.
He had no chance to protect himself.
But Gabe, he kind of got up to the side, and Gabe turned to me and said, "Did that motherfucker just puke on me?" And I'm like, "No, it's just sweat, man."
So, ever since then, and it's great that Tozawa's in WWE now, and I love his stuff, but ever since then, occasionally, when I would run into Tozawa, I would make the joke. Most of us guys have been there, when you know, like, oh man, that's the girl that fucked old boy. Every time I see Tozawa, I'd be like, remember that time Tozawa wrestled Richards? With that same level of excitement. So, needless to say, Nick did not get the spot in Dragon.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
That's good stuff.
We're going to take 5, and then the last segment, we're going to watch a few matches.
We're doing some kind of commentary on this stuff.
I'm going to
say
start.
your workers, because you're in the matches, just say anything. If you want to make a comment.
That's it.
None
of mine are on there. I'm fucking leaving.
Well, there's a rumble tag.
I promise none of yours are on there, Sharp.
I don't even know what they are.
Ozzy and Nick, last man standing.
Is that first?
What's first?
That's not the Iron Man, is it?
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.